Welcome to the March 1st Utility Advisory Committee meeting. Call this meeting to order at 1:01 p.m. Items listed on the agenda may be taken out of order. Two or more agenda items for consideration may be combined, and any item on the agenda may be removed or related discussion may be delayed at any time. Confirmation of posting and roll call.
This meeting has been posted in accordance with Nevada open meeting law. Member Carr and Member Anala are participating by phone, and Member Anderson is absent, and the remainder of the committee is present in the council chambers.
Thank you. Now we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, now it's time for public comment, and I don't see anybody in the audience. Is there any emails or letters that were sent? Okay, and so anyone wishing to make a public comment may call in at 702-589-9629. Again, anyone wishing to call in with a public comment may call 702-589-9629. Since there are no public comments, we'll close the public comment portion. Move on to the agenda. First item on the agenda for possible action is approval of the February 1st, 2023 Utility Advisory Committee meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
I would move to approve the minutes for that meeting.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion carried. Item number 2 on the agenda is the update by the Utilities Director, Joe Stubitz, of the requested budget changes for the fiscal 24 Utilities Operation and Maintenance budget. Joe?
Thank you, Chairwoman Wilkinson. For this time, I'll start with the the landfill budget request. So these are changes from the operation and maintenance budget from FY22. So specifically for the landfill, we're requesting $40,000 additional under the technical line item, and that is for permit required services due to the expansion of the landfill. So we contract these required services out, and that's where that request comes from. For wastewater, we don't have any requested changes compared to the fiscal year 22 operating and maintenance budget for water.
Did you say no changes for wastewater?
No changes for wastewater, that's
Okay.
correct.
Thank you.
For,
And you stated it was 2022 budget. It's 2024 budget, right? Or
The-
three?
yeah, the fiscal, yeah, my apologies, the fiscal year 2023 budget.
Okay, and on the document here, it says 2024 budget. So it's
Correct.
23-24 budget, right?
Correct,
Okay.
yes. We are in fiscal year 23 right now. For water, I do not have any requested changes. For electric, also do not have any requested changes, just some restructuring of the, the maintenance facilities line item, if, for accounting purposes. Have some increased requests for software licenses and upcoming training for the admin budget. This is to accommodate CityWorks, as well as 2 Adobe licenses. For the Adobe licenses, the request is $2,000. And for CityWorks, the request is $20,000. CityWorks will be our asset management and permit record-keeping software for the city. And those are the budget requests for the fiscal 24 operation and maintenance budget.
So are there any increases in salaries?
There's no increases in salaries outside of the collective bargaining agreements. We do have, a couple outstanding agreements that haven't been finalized. In regards to the staff report, where it references classification increases, we're looking at succession planning for the water and wastewater division, and having a number of positions be opened for a couple higher classifications if certifications are met and performance is there. So that will be presented in the budget. For 24, yes.
Does anyone have any questions?
No questions?
Eileen,
Yes, Larry?
so are we done with this, finishing this up or not? Because I guess there's a couple things related to the budget that we've got the meeting on the 8th and then a meeting on the 16th. So Joe, are you still going to go over that, or are you done?
I've finished my budget request, but I will highlight that. Yes, we have the first presentation for the budget to City Council is March 8th. The staff-led citizen budget workshop is March 16th at 2 p.m. And the committee will then have an opportunity to go over what was presented at the first budget in the meeting in April.
Now, is the calendar on the website for the budget cycle this year? I haven't looked yet.
I
I don't
believe
think
it
we've
is.
received one yet, though, have we? To know what meetings are?
It is on the finance page of the website, yes.
Okay. So we have a meeting in March, and are we doing the same thing we did last year? There should be 3 meetings, a meeting in March for the budget, a meeting in April, and a meeting in May. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct.
Okay. So then we'll have to come back in April then after the meeting So the committee will need to look at the council minutes or packets for, March 8th, and then have that data available in April.
Yes, that's correct, and I encourage the committee to participate in the process.
Okay. Thank you.
Howard, did you have anything? I'll take that as a no. Okay, we'll move on to item number 3, update by staff regarding the capital improvement projects.
For this item, the update will be provided by our utility engineer, Bill Bruniga.
Good afternoon, everybody. The 3 areas I'd like to update today are electrical, wastewater, and landfill. For electrical, there's 3 items I'd like to highlight. First of all, feeder 53 that we've talked about in the past is making progress with our in-house maintenance staff, pulling cable, and by the next UAC meeting, we expect them to be complete. And this is on the heels of the contractor work, installing the conduits, etc.
So that's like 500 MCM cable? Is that the feeder size that's coming up through there, I would expect? And our crews are going to do all the makeup and all that on the primary?
I'm sorry,
They're
Ned,
going
your
to be
last comment.
Doing the terminations, making up the primary terminations
Yes,
on the wire and
yes.
cable? Yeah, that's a good idea, yeah.
Terminations testing.
Yeah, they're pretty important to be done right, so that's good.
Feeder 63, that contract was awarded, and that contractor has started site work. They have 6 months to finish. The last electrical item is substation 3, which we're redesigning for the voltage upgrade. And we are able to use CRC, Colorado River Commission, to do that work for us, design and manage the project. We will be doing that via a new interlocal agreement, which is being drafted now, and soon you'll be able to look at it, review also. We'll be able to use CRC for substation 3 and 4 and 5 through this agreement. And there's some economic benefit to doing that. We expect we'll save money on what we had budgeted for substation 3 right off the bat. And we'll actually need that budget benefit for the materials purchases for feeder 53 and 63.
And as I understand it, they're gonna use pretty much the same design that have been used for the other existing substations in town, so that the familiarity with the layout is there for the crews, but also the parts and materials are easily stocked, I guess, if they're all kind of in the same footprint and look alike.
Exactly. And we've already met with CRC to look at some ideas, concepts and options for where to lay out the transformers and the switchgear, given the site involved. So we've already been reviewing that with them. We've kind of boiled it down to a pretty good concept at this point.
I'm sure that's really a good idea. I think it's the way to do it. I had one other question too. I noticed on Adams, I happened to be driving down there yesterday, I think, on Adams Boulevard. They're reconductoring, or are they cross-arm replacements, or what are they doing? They've got the one lane blocked the whole way, and they're doing something up on the overhead.
Is that part of the pole replacement that you're seeing?
Is it actually pole replacement, huh?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
I wondered what it was, so. And then they're just gonna go back with the existing conductors, but just poles, okay, sounds good.
And you can see those temporary poles that they set up in the big ballast boxes to
Oh, I
hold
hadn't
them
noticed
down.
that. I'll have
Yeah,
to
yeah.
run down there and take a look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Good.
That's, for me, that's the first sign of a pole replacement, when they have those temporaries holding
Sure.
everything up.
Oh, yeah, I'll have to go look at that, yeah. Thank you.
Anything else on electrical?
Larry?
I guess I'm good for now. Thank you.
Howard?
Nope, don't have anything to add.
Greg,
No, nothing to add.
Marty?
Next big topic, wastewater. The wastewater treatment plant headworks, the new screen for screening out the solids. We've had a prospective screen unit in mind since 2001, and we now have a consultant that will do all the measurements of the site and manage the project to make sure that it will actually fit and go in properly. So they've started work doing engineering. They were out doing measurements last week when we had that really cold day. So that was our site kickoff.
So is that, I know it's a grinder, basically, that grinds up the waste that's going in there so they don't get plugged up with rags and things like that. But,
It's more of a screen.
oh, is the screen, isn't there something that actually kind of moves it and grinds it up and shreds it?
There's, as a part of pulling it out, it
Oh, I see.
pulls it off the screen and dumps it into.
Oh, okay, so it doesn't have to try to process it and shove it on through it. Basically
Correct.
gets it out of there. That's a better idea, yeah.
It's a conveyor belt screen, continuous
okay.
moving.
Oh, all right, because
So
they
when
used
it
to
gets
use
so
a
much back,
grinder.
yeah, and when it gets so much back of resistance, it flips it into a dumpster
Oh.
and cleans itself.
No, that's a good idea. That's better. I'm certainly
Yeah.
better than the idea they used to use, so that's a good idea.
And yes, it,
Greg, you want, Ned, you wanna take that stuff out of the wastewater, that doesn't do anything.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Plant it.
Yeah, that
Get
makes
rid of
sense.
that.
Sure, good idea.
Yeah, the one I used to work on was called a grit and rubbish removal screen. And it was constantly running, it would fill up a 40-yard dumpster about every 4 hours.
Good.
lift station number one,
This is Larry. So I had a question on this. There was two possibilities for funding for this. I'm not positive. There was one that was a government, I don't know if it was a grant or what it was, that was done about a couple years ago. And then there was, now we have some ARPA money. Does anybody know how that headworks is being funded?
yes, we can talk about that. And yes, the EPA block grants were discussed, and we attended 2 seminar sessions with EPA on the process involved with doing that, and it was so burdensome that for this project, we've decided to press on with ARPA funds. For one thing, there's the restrictions.
Do we have that funds available for something else, or do we have to waive that fund, that grant?
So we are studying other projects that would be more suitable for that whole grant process. This one will be ARPA.
Okay. Yeah, and that'll be part of the, is that part of the rate study or not?
So for the rate study agenda item,
Yeah, we
Well,
could,
it's just a matter of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
we are considering those funds as a potential to be included into the model.
Okay, thank you.
there are restrictions with those grants versus using ARPA funds. That was one of the conflicts. And so to get this project going, and there's a fair amount of overhead with receiving and using a grant. And so for the sake of getting this project going, we will move on and look at the grant opportunity for other things. Good. Any more?
Did you have any more on wastewater?
Yes.
Okay, good. Go
Couple
ahead.
more items. Lift station number one, that's the one that's currently under an odor control project. So the consultant has been working on that. They've studied the machinery and they're starting to develop some possible solutions. They're talking to vendors about what sort of equipment changes might help. Also, along with that, we've been gathering data. We're actually measuring hydrogen sulfide to see what sort of trends or cycles or correlation to operational conditions that might also help us understand how to best fix that situation. So that's currently happening right now. Our last wastewater item has to do with,
Excuse me, this is Howard, who's the consultant on that project for the headworks?
Consultant for the headworks, that is Brown and Caldwell.
All right, thank you.
Good. Oh, I'm sorry. So for the headworks, okay, good. The last wastewater item has to do with repairing one of the sewer lines. So this would be the sewer line on Foothill Drive and the entire section of Foothill west of Yucca, which years ago was damaged by some operation in that light industrial area that poured corrosive and caused considerable damage before they were shut down. And so we've been aware of that, and so now we are pursuing getting quotes from contractors for repairing that sewer line. And Ned, does this sound familiar? Any of this history?
No, I was surprised, what was the line made out of? It wasn't clay, was it plastic?
The pipeline,
Yeah.
ACB.
PVC?
No, AC.
Oh, asbestos, asbestos, okay. Yeah, I could see where that could go, yeah.
So the condition is stable now, but there is considerable damage, and we do have concerns how much longer it's going to function. So right now, I'm in the process of getting quotes from contractors who repair this sort of thing. And there's more than one way to do it, and we're sorting out the best way for the city at this point. And to convey the situation, we actually have a video of one of those cameras that they can put through a pipe, and it gets some pretty detailed video. And it's 2 minutes long, and it's a composite of 5 videos going from manhole to manhole. So it's sort of indexed like video 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it starts with showing what a good pipe looks like. And it's AC pipe, but it's got some kind of lining on it. We're not sure if that was original or if somebody else added it, but you'll see a section that looks good the way it should, and then segment to segment getting progressively worse, till eventually there's places where the pipe has completely deteriorated and you can see the soil through. So it's 2 minutes, and I'd like to run that now just to show the situation involved.
I remember years ago, they did that, they lined the pipe that was going down Buchanan.
Yes.
That one intercept line that went all the way down. And this is up on Yucca, or that Foothill up there, they had the same?
So it's Foothill, and it's that whole section west of Yucca, all the way down.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of doing that, but they probably did, so, yeah. Obviously, somebody did, so.
Yeah. So Holly, how are we doing on rolling? So this, so it's on the screen, it's highlighting the entire area involved. And we'll start with a nice section, which actually is just to the east of Yucca. That's green. So that shows you what it should look like. Okay, nice connections. So that's your comparison now for west of Yucca. There is a low spot we'll have to fix. Yeah.
They did that from the outside.
Yeah, they did.
So liquid along the bottom, but evidently some pretty good fumes affecting the entire radius.
There's some kind of acid that's in there and it reacts with that concrete.
So we got some obstructions. Now this is the worst area. that one of the joints. And here's
See,
the,
that's gonna be replaced, or are you gonna try and line it?
that's,
Obviously gotta be replaced, yeah, look at that.
What's the diameter of that?
8-inch.
Bigger than that, isn't it? Yeah, I'd say it needs to be replaced.
That's great, thanks, Holly.
Thank you. If you want to see it again, you may.
So glad to get some feedback. We actually have talked to a slip lining company who claims they can deal with this, okay?
They can deal with it, but there's no way to get 90% compaction on the exterior of the pipe from slip lining. They have to dig it up, and they'd have to grout it. I wouldn't have an objection to pressure grouting on the external once it was slip lined, but that has to be reinforced. You're not gonna slip line a bubble. It looks like a blowout on a tire. It's not gonna work. That just needs to be replaced. We just ought to bite the bullet and replace it.
Which leads to the next contractor we've met with. Because our overall goal at this point, it's not a high-traffic street, but for cost and for maintaining the street, we are trying to do something trenchless. So the next choice would be, and maybe you're familiar, pipe bursting. And we've had some pretty good meetings with a pipe bursting vendor in town. That one seems technically feasible.
If he can guarantee you 100% compaction on the exterior portion of the pipe with those cavities that are in there, because what I see going on right now is what I've seen down in Los Angeles, where water gets down in from the surface of the asphalt and finds that weak spot and just starts eating that stuff away, and all of a sudden you have a sinkhole. And I don't think we as Boulder Cityites need to have a sinkhole up on Foothill.
You mentioned how things look really big in that video. So because of the small camera, it's really only this big. So we do want to understand the voids involved, how severe they actually are. That's very dramatic in that video. Bursting will be, we expect, $500 to $700 a foot, if that sounds about reasonable. And we're looking at 1,000 feet.
How deep is the line typically, do we know?
It starts out roughly 8 feet shallowest, but by the time it gets that manhole on Yucca, it's way deeper than that.
Oh, right, yeah. Could be.
So the trenching is, that's why we're trying to avoid that,
Yeah.
if possible. So.
Can you
so-
explain what pipe bursting means?
Yes, glad to. We're actually doing this on a small scale with the copper replacements in town, where the basic concept is you start at one end with a replacement pipe, roughly the same size, and it is possible, especially when a pipe is this deteriorated, to run a cable through to the opposite end with a winch and just pull the new cable through, and it might have a spearhead on the front, and it just cuts through what's left of the existing pipe, and you can pull a new pipe through the exact same spot, end to end.
Has to be a straight run though, fairly straight run though. You can't go around curves too much with that, can you?
Correct. So it's pretty impressive, and usually manhole to manhole, and then they are able to pretty quickly then cut the openings for all the feeders coming in. It's pretty slick. And so we're thinking we'd really like to do that,
Can they
even
cut-
with the voids involved.
Can they cut those openings without opening the trench up, or do they have to?
Correct.
Yeah,
Oh, they can.
it's a robot.
Really? And they know where they're at, huh?
What they do is they'll pressurize it, and it'll bulge out to where the
Really?
attachment is, and then the robot will come in and go sideways with the cutter and cut it right out and flush it down.
Pretty cool.
And that's the exact description that we're meeting about. It's kind of pricey compared to the slip lining. So it's definitely a budget hit on that one. ARPA funds. Any questions on the phone?
Howard, do you have any comments?
This is Larry. So is this gonna be done in the, 24 budget then, capital project budget, be shown there? Fiscal year 24?
We'd like to do that this fiscal year.
You're gonna get it done so we're in March, April, May, June, you're gonna get it started before June?
If the conditions that we're seeing lead us to think that this is an emergency, we really need to fix this.
Okay, no, that's good, I was just curious, okay. And we do have a reasonable amount of money in the sewer fund, or the wastewater fund, so we should be able to cover it with the money that's already there.
Didn't you say you were gonna use ARPA funds?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, we could use ARPA funds, okay, there's some funds for it, that's great. Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other parts of town that have that problem, do we know? With the sewer lines like that? I know they used to have it on Buchanan, but I think they took care of that.
Not that we know of right now. That one was pretty bad.
Yeah.
And nobody really seems to remember or know the details of how and what the operation was that caused it to be that way. But that video is very representative of the condition today.
Well, I know when it was on Buchanan, the problem, they said, what happened is after the water would be pumped up from down the valley from the lift station 1 up over the hill, over by Albertsons. Then it would, the pipe would be full of water, and so there was no gassing being released at that point. But when it got over the hump, then the water would start to flow, and then the hydrogen sulfide gas, whatever it was, would basically be flooding down that pipe, and it would react with that asbestos, ACP, and cause it to deteriorate. So that was the biggest thing then, but I don't think there's a whole lot of that type of pipe anymore with sewer in town that I'm aware of anyway, that I can remember.
Right, compared to PVC.
Yeah.
This one was clearly the worst and our biggest concern for the city. Good. Some budget. We are glad to elaborate further on budget. Carol, go ahead and step up.
So on the foothill, because we actually need to do that right away, we are looking to take on our existing projects. Right now, we have project S1901, which is sanitary sewer rehab. That was an older one that has $35,393. We have S2103, which is our rehabilitate sanitary sewer main, that has a balance of $391,486. We also have S2302, which is the rehabilitate 18-inch sewer sanitary mains. We're going to combine those three together to give us the money to do foothill. And everything in our existing projects right now are eligible once we spend the money to be reimbursed by ARPA. So when we say it's ARPA funded, we already identify these as being funded in ARPA. So it's not separate from the stuff that's already approved in our CIP. So I just want to make that clear.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions or, sorry?
Larry, Howard?
I'm good.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Carol.
Thank you, Carol. Those are the highlights for wastewater. The last area that I was interested in highlighting for you is the landfill. And we're working with consultants and the landfill operator on determining a phasing plan, which is basically how they're going to expand over time for the life of the landfill. And we have a huge land area footprint, but currently a very small operational area. So given all the regulations and requirements involved, what's the best plan for expanding out to fill the footprint? And this is over many decades. This is a very long-term plan.
So as part of that plan to excavate a very large hole, I should say, so they can, capture a lot of dirt that they can use to refill over the top of it? Or were they gonna try to just go down a little ways and then just start building up? Because I know when the pits that are there now, they didn't go very deep, it didn't seem like it to begin with. But I was wondering, the deeper you go, because you might get into a lot of rock, which would make it, cost prohibitive at
Exactly.
that point. But,
So it's kind of a combination of both that.
Okay.
We're trying to strategize the best combination of exactly those conditions. In accordance with the regulators also, which leads to the second thing I wanted to mention. You're required to have a perimeter fence around the landfill. Well, the area is so huge, we're not fencing the outer boundary, which would be, some people would say, kind of useless. We're trying to keep the fence near where operations actually are. And we took out a section of fence that appeared to be the next area they were going to move into. Well, that area where we tore out the permanent fence has a temporary fence that really needs to be permanently expanded. And so that's my second item for the landfill. I'm currently talking to vendors about fencing the next operational area in a permanent way. Just so you know, we're expanding the fencing out at the landfill.
well, that's good too, to keep all the debris that the wind tends to pick up and blow, to keep it from going all over the desert. At least it traps it against the fence for the most part.
Exactly, and that is the requirement. So we need to keep the fence close enough to where the operations are, but yet still gauging how long each section of fence fits the phasing plan. So we already have an idea of the next fence expansion, so we're working on that now. Anything else about the landfill?
Does anybody have any questions?
I've got one. We allocated some funds to repair the citizen dump-off point for their 40-yard roll-offs. And that nothing's been done to it. And right now, I think we're creating a bigger hazard by having the K-rails up to where you have to stretch almost 3 feet to put stuff into the 40-yard roll-offs. I think that we as a UAC and the citizens of Boulder need to close that area off permanent until it's fixed, and just let the trucks and personnel pull up to the side of the roll-offs over on the weekend dump area to where they can get to the dumpster, because if we have somebody flip over the K-rail, go between the concrete cinder block and the 40-yard roll-off, we're gonna have a lawsuit on our hands.
Okay.
I've watched several people attempt to do that by stepping over the K-rail, and now you're into a 5-foot fall, and that's not good. We need to get something done to that. The vendor or the operator of the facility has to fix it. So they've got one K-rail out, 2 K-rails out at the end where the roll-offs hit into the back of the cinder block, that the actual soil has eroded and the asphalt's eroded. And then you've got the side K-rails that are so far back that the customers or / citizens of Boulder City cannot even get to them to put the stuff in. So now you're getting a lot of stuff fall down between the block and the machines, and it's just turning into a big mess. We need to address that to the operator of the landfill.
It looks like that's a big enough area, they could close half of it off and do half of it at a time, and still, because it is handy to be able to go out there and just throw it into the down instead of having to throw it up over the top of the side of that other dumpster. But I don't know, maybe it's not big enough, but it's just something to look at.
And actually we had a consultant come out and do some drilling in the area to confirm the mass of that base involved, because that whole area is fill. It's a landfill. And so we're exactly working on that. And the option that you described is one of the, and we'll probably have to discuss this further as far as if citizens still want that convenient dump-in point, the recessed pit, or, as you are pointing out, maybe that whole thing needs to be filled in and we only use the boxes, as the operator calls them, on grade, and then that's it for the weekend. And he's entirely happy to do that, because we asked him, well, that means you're going to have your operational trucks going in and out of there where citizens are. And he said, well, not on weekends. This is the weekend area. So no, it's equipment safety-wise, that would be okay. And that is one option, just to do away with the recessed dump area.
I think for people in cars and lower-based vehicles, that recessed area has to be kept there, but it has to be built in such a way that it is not what I'll call almost bulletproof, but it has to be dummy resistant. And that's one thing that we talked about at one of the other meetings. I know I brought it up, and I do have a solution to it, but it requires having to shut it down for, let's say, 2 months, demo it all out, start over, and build it new.
So next meeting, we can elaborate further on the conceptual designs that we have been working on over the past week, actually. So good topic, good landfill topic for next time.
Yeah, I was just gonna add that, you know, I use that area also, and it's always busy. It's amazing that how many people go out there to dump.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing to make sure that it's, you know, it's gonna be, not a hazard.
So the fact that it's filled, we already have a report from the consultant. Well, how far back would they have to cut away that landfill to get to a good foundation, build a solid wall, then backfill with good material? So they already have some estimates of how to do that, to restore the existing conditions.
I have a really good spot for fill dirt, and that is over behind the fire station where they dug out all the dirt for the utility poles down Adams.
That's a good use.
Any other comments? Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. I'll return control of the meeting to Mr. Joe Stubbins.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate that.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is discussion of the progress of the ongoing electric, water, and wastewater rate study. Joe?
Thank you, Chairwoman Eileen Wilkinson. Update on the rate study progress. So we've met with Raftellus. We had a virtual kickoff meeting in early January. And then at that point, we confirmed the project schedule, focus areas, and data needs. Following that meeting, Raftellus met virtually with this committee to go over the project schedule and focus areas for the financial plan update, and then look at rate structure alternatives. So far to date, city staff has provided Raftellus with data regarding utility budgets, capital improvement plans, and customer usage information. They've reviewed this data and have been following up with us regarding any additional needs or clarification. Raftellus has been using the data to populate the financial planning portion of the rate model, a draft of which was reviewed on a virtual call with staff on the afternoon of February 22nd, 2023. Based on that meeting, Raftellus will revise the model and meet with staff to finalize a draft of the financial plan component, which will be shared with the committee. So as far as kind of what we anticipate, the model and supporting data will be available following the March 8th City Council special budget meeting. And the initial observations suggest that the position of water and wastewater utilities have sufficient existing revenue to fund ongoing operations and projected capital improvements. The electric fund will likely need additional revenue due to increased purchased power costs and increased project costs. Raftellus will work with city staff to exchange information with the Utility Advisory Committee and answer questions between March 8th and the presentation of draft results on April 5th. Following this meeting, I'll get the committee members via blind copy a SharePoint email that shows how to log in and get access to the information in the model.
You know, Joe, question that I've had for some time, and I haven't brought it up, but, and maybe we've done this, it'd be nice to know if we could go back and look at the water consumption over the last 25 years in the city. How much water was sold to the ratepayers, or maybe the city in general, 25 years ago, and how that has, I would imagine it's probably decreased over the years as more and more people in town have gone to desert landscaping in their yards and eliminated their grass. And the worry is that in the utility business, and I'm sure you're aware of this, is what they call a death spiral. Is your costs pretty much stay the same or continue to go up to operate the utility. And they are kind of governed by how much water or how much electricity you sell. But if you, over the time, in the case in Boulder City, where I've seen a marked increase in the number of desert landscaping, and I understand why, and it makes sense. But it'd be interesting to see how much that's impacted the sale of water. Because the less water you sell, the more you have to charge for it. And I know going forward it's going to get worse, and I'm hoping they're considering that so that we don't get ourselves into a situation where we run the cost of water up to $10 or $15 a thousand, just to meet cost, because we no longer water any grass or any lawns in town. And again, that goes back to Boulder City's control of our destiny by limiting our growth so that we can avoid those kind of things. And so we may want to be mindful of just how that's going to affect us going forward if we continue to raise the rates on the water so much that it becomes a death spiral, where basically you don't have the revenue anymore to fund your operations, so you just got to keep raising that rate up, and makes it worse and worse and worse. It's something we ought to have them look at if they're not planning on doing. I think it'd be a good idea.
They're certainly looking at the revenue requirements we have, which, as you mentioned, are our fixed costs that are rising over time to maintain the system. Based on the initial observations, the water fund has sufficient existing revenue with the existing structure. The Southern Nevada Water Authority is looking at additional ways to conserve. So a couple of things to kind of keep in mind: what they're calling an excessive use charge. We haven't introduced that to this committee or to council, but that's an option. And then with the golf course water budgets, we've got 2 municipal golf courses, but we have one, not private, but non-municipal golf course. It's open to the public, but their water usage and cost of that is managed by an agreement. And so with the water budgets being reduced from 6.3 acre feet per irrigated acre to 4 for, starting in calendar year 24, that's going to hit fiscal year 25. What will happen is that, each one of these courses is going to receive information. Okay, here's what your usage is. Here's what you'll need to get to not pay the excessive use to exceed the budget. And so that will likely be brought as a resolution, but that's one way to capture costs.
Will that extend to residential users and their grass in their yards, for instance? Because there'll be some people that want to continue to have grass. And are they going to basically come to the point where they're going to say that needs to go all the way, and if you can choose to water grass, it's going to be an excessive use charge, and they're going to charge you for that?
So they are doing that currently at the Las Vegas Valley Water District,
With
basically
existing grass owners?
With existing, regardless of what usage they are. If you are over a certain percentage, if you're in a certain category based on the season that you're in, they are currently doing that. So that's something that we could look to bring to this committee and with advisement and later city council to see how we want to address that for conservation purposes.
Yeah, because I think that we would want to somewhat, because we have controlled our growth. We have basically chosen the standard of living and the quality of life here, and part of that includes grass and green. And I would hate to see it to the point where basically we're going to force everybody just by virtue of raising the cost so that they can't, it's prohibitive for them to water grass anymore. And that would be kind of sad because we chose to do something about that years ago, and we're not like Las Vegas.
I have to interject something. I'm seeing something happen right now that is like deja vu that I was at many years ago, and that's Los Angeles and their consumptive water usage. I sure would hate to take and not use the proper baseline for the data gathered for an excessive water use. Number one. Number two, I don't feel that we should take and benefit Las Vegas Valley for our water savings and our frugalness. And that is exactly what's happening. So we've got a baseline allotment of acre feet of water per year from the Colorado River based upon a contract that SNWA now has possession of from Boulder City. We've also gone underneath that baseline by the water consumptive restrictions, and we've saved money and conserved money and water usage. So now they're going to take and put a penalty on people for a lifestyle. So then you might as well get rid of clean green Boulder City and call it dirty brown stinky town, as one person said, because it's all going to be desert landscaping. And then what's going to happen is, and I've already proven it on several sites that I've owned in my lifetime, your electric consumption goes up because your air conditioning system has to work a lot harder to cool down your property because of the reflective and captive heat in the doggone landscaping. So we've got a double-edged sword, and we have to be very careful, because the problem I'm seeing is that every water we save and gallon we save is being sent back over to SNWA through Las Vegas and Henderson to be used for their building boom that they're having. Okay, there's no way you can tell me that the solution to pollution is dilution by the Lake Mead and having them push their water back into Lake Mead. There are chemicals in that water that we are consuming even here that we can't detect. And it has to do with pharmaceuticals and everything else that goes down through the waste system. Okay, so where is our guarantee that we're going to get the cleanest water we can possibly get for Boulder City? We can't, because we're now tied in hard to the bottom intake number 3, I think it's called, down at the bottom of the lake, where we're pulling everything that's been down there at the bottom sitting still, and we're now distributing it in through the pipelines. And I guarantee you that Boulder City nor SNWA has the testing facilities that the City of Los Angeles Department of Water and Power have at their laboratory, because I don't see any kind of contact basin in SNWA's system that is using ultraviolet light to kill every bit of bacteria that's in the water. So I've got a severe problem with them telling us that they're going to take and put penalties on us for the way we use water. And I agree with that, Ned, that yeah, we have to keep it as low as possible, but I have to look at what we're paying for bottled water, that for drinking and for consumptive use. And I'll tell you right now, Ned, water from Sparklet, spring water, is now $9 for a 5-gallon bottle. So I guarantee you we're not going to hit that amount of money per 1,000 gallons from Boulder City. But we do have to take a step back and not follow the beat of the drum that's being played and stand alone.
Thank you. Howard, Larry, do you have any comments?
This is Larry.
Larry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Howard.
No, this is Howard, I don't.
Yeah, so I guess, I was looking at, the rate process. So what I heard you say, Joe, was that they didn't think there was any need for a change in the water, rates, but are they looking at the tiers? Is that gonna be something they're gonna bring to us or not?
We are looking at the rate structure alternatives, so that's in the scope, development of rate structure alternatives, and that is based on the desire for conservation. So that's both in water and electric, looking at the possibility.
Part of the report? I mean, so there is, if I understand, there isn't a report now, so is that gonna be part of the study they're putting in there? Is that gonna be where are we gonna see that before the 5th?
We're going to be able to see that in the model.
In the model will have that, okay.
Yep.
Now, what about solar? So I guess, so since we're still on the rates, I'll switch to that really quick. But the overall water conservation and that, yeah, is got a lot of factors that it's going to be confusing. So now we have 2 meetings to talk about that. So that's one thing as far as the rates go. Now we've got solar, and I'm not sure solar is really shown anywhere in the study. So how are they looking at the solar, and how will we know what's going on before the April 5th?
We're looking at solar as a distributed generation resource, and so what we're going to look at is the amount of capacity that collectively solar customers need on an instantaneous basis, and compare that to the basically our net metering policy.
But where will we see that in the SharePoint?
So I'm not sure how that will be conveyed, but we'll make sure that information is to you, whether that's
Okay,
in the
'cause,
model.
we're going
and-
to need as much information as we can before the April 5th, and we're going to have to do a lot of homework. The committee is to do a lot of homework to try to figure out we understand all the information. So as people are bringing up, we've got the different tiers in water and in electrical now, so we need to sort of be able to understand that, and so we'll have it depends how much when we get the data, when the data is posted and all that, to get all of our understanding.
So it's my understanding, Larry, on the solar, so they cannot be charged any additional rate based on the legislation passed in 2017. I forget the exact name of it, but it's like renewable bill of rights type thing. So as part of the rate process with this, what we can do is revisit the impacts to solar. It doesn't have to be something that if we take care of it now, we can, but we're going to have to basically find ways that we can do it within the framework of the current law.
Okay. Now, what about the resolutions? Are they going to suggest changes to the resolutions, and are they going to put that into the SharePoint?
There's going to be recommendations based on the findings. I'm not certain if it's going to be exactly the resolution should say this. What we're going to do is define what the revenue requirements are, and then show. The
reason I bring that up is because solar would be one where you might change the resolution a little bit, or try to clarify things or something. So that's another place where the sooner we understand it, because you're going to want to change the resolution. If we're going to try to get this done by July 1st, there's not a whole lot of time to review the resolutions and all that either. So that's just trying to make sure we're looking at all the data.
Very good.
Okay, thank you.
Howard, did you have some comments?
No, I don't, Eileen. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'm good.
Okay, thank you, Joe. We'll move on to item number 5, an update regarding the Southern Nevada Water Authority options for recycling Boulder City's treated effluent water, provided by Joe.
Thank you, Chairwoman Wilkinson. For item number 5, the latest update with the authority. So the plan is to have the authority come present to City Council on the March 14th meeting, and what they're going to bring to Council is what they brought to the committee at the last Utility Advisory Committee meeting. The committee's recommendations are in the staff report. So all the options will be presented to the City Council, and this is not, just to be clear, this is not selecting one option that's going to kind of lock us into that's what we're going to do. What SNWA is willing to do is to pursue a feasibility study regarding I think at most 2 options. So initially it was 1, I think now they're open to 2. And so that's what staff will be getting direction on after their presentation at the next council meeting.
Okay, so we've communicated to them what we discussed at the last meeting of 2 of the, what was it, the 4 options we wanted to throw out.
Correct.
Okay.
They are going to see all the options, but the committee's recommendations are in their report.
Does anyone have any comments or questions?
This is Larry. Go ahead, Howard.
No, Larry, go ahead. You're up.
Okay, so, Joe, on the, do you know what the presentation from SNWA, they said the same presentation that was presented in our meeting? They didn't have all their costs in there. A big one is they didn't have that 12 million for connection into the, Henderson. So do you know, are they going to include that, or can you ask them that? Because it's very important that they show as much of the cost as possible instead of less. Because that's what I pointed out in the last meeting, is that you had the cost that was stated in our January meeting, then there was cost that was stated on the presentation.
I will reach out to
Larry,
them.
do you mean by connection fee, the charge from the city of Henderson, or just the pipeline?
The charge to the city of Henderson, it was $12 million just for Boulder City to say if they act like a new customer, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, that's what I understand. I think that's right. And also, we need to know what our annual costs would be for that water as well. I mean, there's probably going to be some sort of cost, some sort of fee to treat that wastewater as well. So we need to know what that annual fee would be too.
Yes, we do. So they've showed us about 300,000 to 500,000, but they didn't show us the pumping cost. So, and we also need to know if there's more on top of that. So I think that's exactly right. And then the other one is that with 1 and 4, I don't think it's 2 and 3, or maybe 3 had it, but 1 and 4 had and I think you pointed it out, Howard, is that it had a 25, was it a 50, it was a high point for error. So was that a 50% or 25%, or was it a high error of?
I don't know if I said that or not, but I know that's in there though. You're right.
Yeah. So they really have to understand all the numbers. If you don't have the numbers in there right, then you don't understand the full options.
And Joe, you're saying that they're going to do it. SNWA wants to conduct a feasibility study?
Not I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Howard.
That's all right. No. I was asking, what their feasibility? Do they want to look at all 4 options? What's going to be their approach?
So the intention is to narrow down the feasibility to what the city council recommends.
Down to 2 options. Correct.
Yeah, at most. Ideally 1. And then SNWA would contract that out to a consultant, an engineering firm, to get both technical capabilities as well as cost-based data, and then that would then come back to both the committee and the city council.
I mean, it seems to me that if they're going to, that's probably what should have been done from the start, was a feasibility study of some sort, because right now we don't even have any real direction on the costs that are just missing from this whole report. I think Larry pointed it out just now, and we've said that for the last 2 meetings. So it almost seems like if they're going to do this, we ought to look at all 4 options and get some hardcore prices so that this thing can be really analyzed. Because I think we're going to find out, I think we're all fearful that we're going to find out that all of these costs are going to be pretty high. And the annual maintenance costs and operational costs are going to be considerably high as well.
So we certainly can invest in the feasibility studies for those that aren't pursued. I mean, that would be a cost and an option that we could do, City Boulder City. That's not something that I'm currently planning on budgeting for. But if that's something the committee wants to do, I know, Howard, that SNWA is not committing to that. They're committing to, a deep dive of at most 2, ideally 1. And so conceptually, we should come up with what we want, okay? And there's really kind of 3 concepts. Do we want to upgrade our treatment facility to additional treatment? That's a question we have to ask. If that answer is no, then really option 1 or 4 is there. Do we want to manage this treated resource for irrigation purposes only? And box us into that, then that kind of puts us at option 2. And then, do we want to have the additional treatment and get the return flow credits? And that would be internally to Boulder City's infrastructure and wouldn't box us into having to use that resource for irrigation only.
Well, I think at the last meeting, Greg brought this up about, the hydraulic, looking at the hydrology of that valley, of the El Dorado Valley. And I supported that. I think we all kind of supported his thoughts that we could be returning water to the Colorado River through seeps that are downstream of the dam. And if that is taking place, I don't understand why that shouldn't be even considered or looked at. And, as much water has been put in there, in that valley over the years, I think what Greg brought up, that he's even seen evidence of that even happening, I think we need to pursue that as well.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Howard.
Any other comments?
Well, I'm just not sure that we're gonna give looks like that, sounds to me like the SNWA jumping around what we're trying to recommend and going directly to the council. And I still don't think there's enough information for anybody to make any kind of decision. And, the point I think is being made that somebody has to pay for a feasibility study, and who's gonna pay for that? Because it's not gonna be cheap. You know that, if you're gonna study all those, even 2 options, it's gonna be, I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking close to $1 million to even look at something like that. If you're gonna get some hardcore costs, $500,000 just even to get going. So we need to look at all these costs.
So Howard, SNWA has committed to funding the feasibility study. They've committed to paying that expense.
I've got a question on this whole deal regarding the return flow credits. SNWA wants to do that, and I assume if we let them take our sewage water for return flow credits, who benefits from that? How do we benefit from that?
I think that's a great.
They what? I'm sorry, say again?
I think that's the benefit of that. That's a great question, because right now that 1 million gallons of water, if they want to spend $26 million on a pump station, that's a one-time cost. But who's going to benefit after that?
Exactly. That's why I'm not seeing what the advantage of this whole operation is.
So all of the purveyor members benefit from return flow credits. It's how we're actually able to maintain the amount of water that we get. So SNWA has rights to all of the credits. Us being a member of SNWA as a purveyor member, we indirectly get the benefit of the total amount of return flow credits.
It might take us 50 years to take advantage of that, assuming we can still have enough water to do that. Because right now we've got 17,000 acre feet roughly, and we're only using about 10 or 11,000 of it. So it's going to take and we're going downhill as far as how much we're going to be using with our rate structure.
But I have another problem. Let me interject. Nobody's looking at the fact of what they're doing with the wastewater, pushing it back into Lake Mead without having a fresh source of water coming into Lake Mead to dilute the stuff we're putting into the Lake Mead from the wastewater treatment plants. And as the turbidity and the stuff gets thicker and thicker and thicker, we can't drink it.
I have heard that discussed and that concern raised, and it's my understanding that the amount of deliveries and the way the water is exchanged is that you are getting a fresh supply of water coming into the lake based on us depleting our reserves.
No, the problem you have is that when they built the wastewater treatment plant in North Vegas, they put in aeration pipes into the lake, and that is where they're discharging the processed and treated water, hoping that the stuff will stir and blend with the Colorado River water, which is coming into the top end of the lake. That's why we drilled, and the city and everybody drilled at the bottom of behind the dam to pick up the water. But the problem is that even though they picked up the water in the bottom of the lake, the coldness and everything else is now being churned into what's in the process, and we're picking up the bottom heavy stuff faster and faster and faster to our intake. And what I'm saying is there is no lab that I know of in today's age that can test for every contaminant and everything that's down in the bottom of that lake. And that's what we're picking up as the original flow of the Colorado River. And we don't understand that, and we're not looking at that. That's why you're seeing Sparklets and other companies sending out purified and bottled water, and they're finding out the purity of the bottled water is worse than the tap water because they can't get the contaminants out.
Well, I think you're a little bit off base there, Greg, but because just what you said about North Las Vegas and all the treatment plants in the valley discharge into the Las Vegas waters. And that's where that water's going. So that's okay. And that water quality, coming out of those treatment plants is pretty good stuff. But you're right, there are contaminants in that water and so forth that can cause us issues. But that's why they use ozone treatment and the water treatment is to break down those particular contaminants. And SNWA does have a laboratory capable of looking at all the water quality standards. So they have a pretty sophisticated lab there. And they're meeting all those requirements that are set up by the US EPA. So, but I think you are correct in saying that we're going to start concentrating them as the lake goes lower and lower. There is no escape, even though Joe said, like you said, Joe, that their excuse is that is new fresh water coming in. There's still going to be a certain amount of contaminants that are going to stay in that water and be recycled. But I don't think it's so far everybody is meeting the water quality standard, but we'd have to start looking at, but I think it's a concern we have to keep in mind.
The problem with the testing quality is based upon per capita of population. As soon as you get to another threshold in numbers and population, the testing quality goes tighter. We're not testing to the 20 million people that we should be testing for if you want to have a test lab. Okay, that's the problem I got. Some of the stuff they'll let slip by, but I know some of the pharmaceuticals they can't even test. Okay, and that's the problem I'm having is we're taking and pushing more water back that's quote unquote purified, reused water. Okay, we are not testing for every chemical at the population level we should be testing for. We're testing to the minimum population level, not the maximum.
Ned, did you have a comment?
Well, again, it gets back to the bottom line here. What good does this do Boulder City? I mean, I can see how the return flow credit really is a good idea for Vegas and Henderson and North Las Vegas and the rest of the purveyors, but for us, we're not even using maybe two-thirds, maybe a third, maybe half of what we're allocated, a little over half of what we're allocated. And if we're going to have to pay, sounds like a lot of money to get that water back into the lake, why are we doing it? I just don't get that part.
But Ned, that million gallons of water to SNWA is $26 million. If you look at the cost that they wanted to appropriate for that pump station, that's what they think the cost is. And then they don't have any setup for them to pay any other costs, like the O&M costs that the city of Boulder City would have to pay.
Exactly.
And that's what the cost is to us. It is that a benefit for 1 million gallons of water.
I don't think it is, but that's me, you know.
I don't either, but I think Greg's idea of looking at the hydrology of the El Dorado Valley and where that water's going, if it's going back to the Colorado River, we're done. We've done our work.
I would think so, and they probably have ways, I don't know, putting irradiated something into the water and seeing if they pick it up in some of the springs down on the river level. It'd be interesting
Well,
to see if there's a way.
It would take too long. We wouldn't be alive by the
That's
time
what I'm
that
thinking.
study
It's gonna
was
take a long
done.
time for that water to
But
get
there
there.
are underwater rivers. I know that there's a group in LA Water and Power that has those documents, okay? They're using the underwater rivers as a negative ground return path to the Delta power plant all the way from Los Angeles. They've traced all that water, and it's conductive, and they've proven that it's the same conductivity in the same river that goes from Delta, Utah, all the way down to Los Angeles. It's been proven.
No.
So I know there's studies afoot that have that, and I listened to an old guy from many, many, many years ago telling me that in spring runoff, you would see the Colorado River on the west side, all the fissures open up and become waterfalls.
Yeah.
So that water is coming from somewhere, and it's not coming from the Colorado River itself, because it's 200 feet above the Colorado River coming out of the walls of the desert.
Well, and I know from a fact, because when I was a kid, we used to go to the hot springs down below Gold Strike. We called them Gold Strike hot springs. And you can see the river gauging station and the catwalks that they built. They've taken them all down now because they were dangerous. But they were, when they were building the dam, they were measuring the amount of water that was going down those hot springs. And that was before the dam was in. So that water's been going down there and down here at, we called it Boy Scout Canyon. There's a hot spring down there that goes into the river. Those are both, you guys that live here probably all know about that, but it's a fair amount of water that's been going in there forever. So it must be coming from someplace, and it'd be interesting to know exactly where that's coming from. But it was coming down there before there was a lake behind the dam. I know that.
But Ned, your question of what is the benefit to the city of Boulder City is paramount in this whole discussion. That's kind of what we have to prove. If we do our job as a committee to protect costs and so forth, there's a lot of money being spent for that 1 million gallons of water.
I totally agree.
Yeah, that's, because I think the feasibility, this is Larry, the feasibility study really has to be looked at. There's several advantages, and I think SNWA is only looking at a portion, and you guys are bringing up some really good points. So whether Boulder City has to say, okay, SNWA is covering the options that they brought up, and then somebody else, who's going to look at the aquifer that's currently being done, who's going to pay for that? But there's a lot of data there. And Joe, do you know how long that the feasibility study was going to be suggested to take?
I do not have that information, but I imagine that would be, as an option or options were selected, that we would know a timeline and get that from SNWA.
Hopefully they can say something on the 14th or pretty quick, because it's like a hurry up and wait. It's like we've been asking for this for 3 years, and now it's like, we got to make a decision right now. And so is the feasibility study going to be another 6 months, and then they'll give us 2 weeks to look at the feasibility study and go on? These are things that are frustrating to also.
Yeah, Larry, any study's going to take minimum of 6 months. We know that.
No, I know that. So, but it's everybody's saying they want it done now, and there's no way we can do it now feasibly.
Easily, that study be 6 months to get everything put together, all the investigations that have to be done, and then we'd start discussing it at minimum in 6 months, maybe a year before it's completed.
Probably. Yeah, I'm just saying. I'm just trying to get the data out. We're all saying right here. There's a lot of data that's really being discussed in these presentations that need to be understood.
And there's no cost attached that we can really rely on at this point.
Exactly. We don't have all the upfront costs, and we don't have all the yearly costs. And you guys are all exactly right. It's what this is worth to Boulder City, and you guys are all saying the same thing too. We're only using about half of our allocation, so we don't get the benefit of. It's the customers that are using more that get the return flow credit.
There is other ways to help, but as Ned pointed out, if we start conserving water, it's gonna we're gonna make up those costs somewhere. This is not a cheap thing to do, guys.
No, it's not. It's not. You know. So again, as we've all said, we want to be conservative. We want to be economically, environmentally friendly, but at the same time, it's what's right, not just what somebody's trying to push through. There's several things that are the right thing. So there were very good comments today. I'm just saying there's still, I think everybody needs to understand, and the city and the council needs to understand, there's more data that has been presented so far.
Okay. So on the update for the SNWA options, I think we've discussed that plenty. I'd like to close that item and move on to number 6. Does anybody have any objections? Okay, so next on the agenda is the update from the Utilities Director regarding water and power consumption, as well as the progress of turf removal throughout the city.
Thank you again, Chairwoman Wilkinson. So to give you an update on water conservation, Boulder City continues to lead the way in water usage conservation among the SNWA members. So our water usage declined year over year, 22.8% and 27.3% from this year to the last 3-year average. And then on energy demands continue to remain seasonally low. We're preparing for that to pick up really quickly. We've had kind of a cooler than usual winter. So for the graphs that you could see in your packet, the red line is coming out of the Meade substation, and the blue line is coming out of the tap. And you can actually see when we came off the tap, you could see that kind of 3/4 the way into the month. And then on the turf, so we've got a draft interlocal agreement, and that's going to be going before the SNWA board March 16th, and that is to convert approximately 913,474 square feet of irrigated turf. The breakdown of that will be a number of parks, public right-of-ways, city buildings, and the golf courses. And assuming that gets approved, then that would come before the committee, probably the Parks and Rec Commission, and then go to the City Council. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have on water and power consumption.
You know, Joe, one thing I would like to ask, and if it's not too much of a problem, it'd be interesting to look back at what our purchase power and the amount of water we purchased, every year for the last 20 years, 25 years. Even if you go back further, I know their numbers are there because I used to track the power myself every year and kept a pretty close look at that, because it would be interesting to see how those numbers are changing with the rates, with the population, with climate, with all these factors that are in there. It'd be interesting to know where they're going, so that we get an idea where it's going to go in the future. And we know it's going to those numbers are going to decrease because we're going to be raising the costs on them. And so it'd be interesting to know just how much.
So specifically, just to address your question, can you clarify what you're hoping to?
Okay, purchased power, wholesale power. You got Hoover, you got Parker Davis, you got SSCA, and you've got maybe some others out there now. But also the water all comes from SNWA. I'm sure that it's fairly simple. They probably know exactly what Boulder City has bought every year for the last 15, 20, 30 years. It'd be interesting to see what those are, and they're probably graphed someplace too. It'd be interesting to see what that curve looks like.
In quantity and cost?
Yeah, cost too would be nice, yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't want you to spend a lot of time on it, but I think it's probably readily available, and it would be nice to see those numbers.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Joe, in your first comments, you talked about the percentage decrease of water that Boulder City is saving. But it seems to me that when we hear anything from SNWA, it's the number of gallons per person. And we have a lot more allotment of water, and I wonder if SNWA keeps forgetting about that. that we have to get down to the 63 gallons per person per day when we really have a larger allotment, and we save because we have a smaller population, as Ned has pointed out, that we agreed to in past years to only allow so many people moving into Boulder City each year with the number of houses being built. And I don't think that's being considered by SNWA.
Larry, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I guess I got a couple things. I agree with what you said, Marty. That's a good, we need to keep an eye on all that issues now. So I guess I had two questions regarding the energy, the graph that you've had in the packet. So the water, I don't know if I read it in the packet or someplace else, but the water is going up at the end of the month. So it looks like that there was a shutdown at the plant, and so everybody was. I guess it was in the water report that everybody was getting a little more water at the end of the month to fill their reservoirs. Is that why you got that spike of water?
Can you tell me what page you're referring to, Larry?
Okay, so on I think it's page 31 of our packet, when you're showing the blue line and the red line. And then I think it's those things that's really small. I always try to tease about being a eye chart, and that one's definitely an eye chart. And if I can read it right, it starts off at Sunday, and then to your last Sunday, you have the red line that you show a spike, and we're using pretty much average water, and then all of a sudden there's a spike. And if I read it in the water report that people were filling the reservoirs because of the treatment plant was going to go down for a certain amount of time.
I'm not finding that page that you're referring to. You're talking about the water usage report?
Well, they got the water usage report. That's separate. I'm looking at the page, just the packet that you just referred to earlier. You've got a blue line, red line that
Yes.
you showed right above on page 31, right above financials.
Yeah, that's
And I just
energy.
want to make sure that everybody understood, if I'm understanding correctly, that the spike at the end of the month was not due to the public, but was due to the city filling the reservoirs.
So you're referring to the energy graphs.
Yes.
Yeah, there was a switch off of the tap. So it's just basically we're coming off of the tap for whatever reason. So that was then picked up all through Meade. I'm not certain what the reason was for that. There's some operational need. Maybe that was a request by WAPA. But that was we were just getting our energy all from Meade instead of from Meade and the tap.
Okay, but then you go to the red is water, right?
No,
So right below that, the red
those
is
are-
water,
those
you
are-
go up. The last week, you had a spike that went up. And that is due to Boulder City filling its reservoirs due to a shutdown in the treatment plants, I guess, in March or something. Or was that January? It'd be in February. But anyway, it wasn't due to the increase in usage by the public. It was an increase, I'm sure, by the reservoirs.
Okay.
So just another one, just trying to understand the facts is all, and how we're seeing everything. Then the other question I had is, so are we pretty much following the estimated power that power costs, or is it costing us even more than the estimate was for the energy so far? Do you know, Joe?
We are not following the estimated energy costs. In fact, we had met with Silver State Energy Association last week and kind of went over the estimated budget we had for fiscal year 23, and we're currently $4 million over on the spot ahead market. And that's due to really the cost of market energy. We were 22% over estimated load in December. So we're looking at that. The positive note about that is that's not being immediately passed down to the customers. It's SSEA is still able to kind of bill the estimated cost, but there is the possibility in the future that direct costs would have to be passed down to customers, and that would be on a monthly basis. And it's my understanding our only way to really pivot or adjust from that is the purchase power rider.
Now, so that looks like that's more an important issue than, because we were estimating about $7.3 million. Are you saying that we're estimating $11 million now for power for this year?
That's correct.
Oh, okay, boy, yeah. So their estimate for fiscal year 24 is going to be very important, and we need to figure out how, in this rate process also then how to incorporate that. So that's going to be a very important aspect.
Yes, you're absolutely right, and that extra cost that won't be captured via our budget. There's funds that were set aside in the past, to true up this amount. So there wasn't any additional costs that were needed by the current ratepayers.
Okay, and that's, I guess, the true-ups and stuff. That was one thing I think we had talked about, trying to get a better understanding of the true-up, and I think we're going to need to understand that even more. So, because the $4 million, we got to figure out the rider is nowhere going to come close to that, and we've got to figure out where else to come. But I guess, so if it's been more, is the rider going to have to kick in? We're going to kick another rider in then?
No, so we are not anticipating any different monthly invoice charges that are different from the budget, so the estimated charges. So we're still being invoiced for estimated charges. It's just for the fiscal year, that estimate was quite off. So what we're doing is we're meeting with Silver State on a quarterly basis to make sure that their estimates are kind of sound. The challenge that we face as a community is that our costs for purchasing power are going up at our low-cost agreements with Hoover. The capacity is going down, and the market prices are particularly high in all times of the year. So even not just the summertime when we would expect to be really, okay, we've got some high costs in the winter as well. So if we're off, it hurts us quite a bit. So we're looking at that on our end to see on the distribution side what class of customer is that coming from. We're looking at making sure metering is correct, evaluating any potential tampering. So we're looking at all of that, kind of like a extreme leak detection, but on the energy side.
Yeah,
Okay, so I'll bring it up in the next agenda item, but I think we're still talking about it here. So I think that's something that the utility committee needs to understand a little bit more as far as what long-term sales they have and what we're buying on the spot market. And it just, the more we understand, the more it makes sense of some of these big changes. So maybe we need to see that in the next couple of months. We probably won't be able to do it for the budget, but I think it's a big issue for the rate study is that we understand more of the data.
Yeah, and Silver State has committed to presenting either to the committee or council to kind of go over the impacts of this.
I guess if they could start with us, that would be helpful. If that's what the rest of the committee agrees to, I think it'd be nice that we could start with us.
I think that's a big deal, because I don't see wholesale power costs going down much in the future. There's a lot of factors. A lot of it is weather and just the crazy climate. Everything that's going on is different nowadays than it has been. See a lot more cloud cover this year, so a lot of the solar is not producing like it's supposed to. We've shut down a lot of, almost all the coal plants are gone. Those are some of the cheapest base load we had out there. And we're losing even natural gas now because people don't like that anymore. So I think the future is not too bright on the wholesale power costs looking forward. So we need to take a look at that and kind of factor that into what we're going to be doing.
I've got a question for all the old timers. When's the last time we did an insulator wash on our 69 kV? conductor insulator wash on porcelain ceramic insulators. When's the last time Silver State did it for us? If they're monitoring at their end and we're getting it on our end, okay, that's one thing, but if they're taking and billing us at our end as receivables, in other words, wherever the power meter is, your line losses can be darn near exponentially high because you're not keeping track of washing insulators. We had a saturation problem on a 230 kV line from here to Victorville. It was taking almost 150 amps of power just to energize the line with no load on it because of line losses on the insulators. They dispatched wash crews out immediately to wash all the glass because it was tracking to ground. And you have to take and monitor that and keep track of that stuff. And I have not seen a wash truck out in this valley in at least 28 years, other than what Water and Power's had, because they say composite insulators are the way to go. Composite insulators will track and get dirty. Okay, so when is the last time Silver State had our lines washed that we're taking power off of for them? That's the question I've got as a UAC member, because I have not seen a wash truck out here in a long, long time, and we still got ceramic insulators out here on the 69 kV, which is what Silver State's delivering to us at.
I don't think we ever, at least I'm not aware of them ever washing the insulators here, but I know that usually we don't have quite the atmospheric pollution, the smog, and we tend to get enough rain. We used to get rain. Nowadays we don't get nearly as much rain as we used to. But that
I agree,
helped.
but we've also built a hell of a lot of solar farms that are tracking on either side of where those line corridors are, and I'm saying they're getting dirty.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. Does anyone have any other comments? If not, we'll move on to discussion regarding potential agenda items for upcoming meetings. Does anyone have any suggestions?
Eileen, I think we should keep on the SNWA, item 5. I think we need to keep that on our list.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we're gonna have we're gonna want a similar, agenda item, except I think we're gonna want, for possible action. So let me just look and see at what we're looking at again and see what we got. So we got the minutes. We've got the, so we're gonna have a budget. So the budget will be a discussion on budget, right? So number 2 would be a discussion on budget, and we would need for a possible action, I think, correct?
Yes.
And then number 3, then it depends on if we have time for an ongoing capital or not, if that needs to be dropped. Number 4, discussion on rates, so that's going to be for possible action. Discussion of ongoing electrical and rate study. Number 5, let's see, update so we need an update on Southern Nevada Water Authority, and I guess it would be, can we say, and information or something from the council meeting? We need to put that in there, or just make sure we bring it back?
Yeah, I imagine Joe can give us an update from what the
And we would
council
have Joe's
discussed.
update on the number 6 would be the same, I guess, and number 7. So number 2 would be for possible action. Number 3 would be for possible action. And number 3 it depends on if we keep number 3 as the ongoing. Number 4 would be for possible action. Then it depends on if the SNWA, was there any possible action we would need for that. The big one, of course, is the rate study and the budget. And those are the 2 big things that we need to understand and keep moving forward. Is there anything else we need to move forward with in the next month or 2?
And Joe, is there anything you think we need to review?
I think what you've captured is what you discussed, Larry, is important. you know, we are having the interlocal agreement from CRC can be brought. If that's something that the committee would like to see, we can make that be its own item.
Yeah, that would be great, Joe. That would be great, Joe. Joe, if you could put that as an agenda item, that would be great.
Okay. Then there was mention previously about the residential drop-off area. Is that something wants to be identified specifically, or we could discuss that in the ongoing capital?
Yeah, I
I
think
guess
we
maybe we should do the ongoing capital, because I think that's good, and I think also an update on the sewer would be good to understand. So I think 3 is something we need to maintain.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is basically the layout minutes for possible action on O&M budget, ongoing capital improvement plan, for possible action on the rates, financial update, for possible action on the Colorado River Commission interlocal agreement for substation 3 rebuild. And then I know it was mentioned the update regarding SNWA options. Do we want to have that on there again, or, you know, because it'll be discussed at the March 14th council meeting? Is that something that the committee still wants to talk about again?
Yeah, the SNWA, we definitely want to keep that going.
All right, and then a monthly update on water and power consumption. Okay.
I believe that, yes, we'd still want that.
And then new agenda.
that
Right,
sounds good
and
to
then
me.
Future agenda.
Okay, is there
That's
any?
and we don't have anybody behind us on the 5th, do we?
Holly?
No,
No?
that particular day I'll be traveling immediately after the meeting for legislative action work with the Nevada Rural Electric Association. But there's no meeting following this meeting. April, yes.
Now, on April 26th, it was stated, I believe, that we have somebody after us at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, the April 26th meeting is a workshop.
Correct, but are we going to be able to extend that to rates and budget and the SNWA, or is that just going to be the rate study?
It's
Do we
just
know
going to
yet?
be just going to be rates.
So we will not talk, we won't be able to talk about the SNWA or the budget. Well, the budget's really part of the rate study, but, so then we will have 3 hours, we'll have from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and it's just going to be on the rate study.
Yes.
And so then Raftillis isn't doing a report, if I understand correctly. They're just doing is that presentation, and hopefully we'll get something that's something of a finalized for their recommendations. If I understand, it'll be the study and then some type of recommendation. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's not going to be a comprehensive report like what was submitted for the last study.
Okay, so it just seems like we're gonna okay, so April is a big meeting, and then we have to get a lot of data to do homework between now and April 5th, and then see if anything majorly happens between April 5th and April 26th.
Correct.
And then whether we would have a meeting, well then I think we would still then, I guess, if anything happens, we'd have to decide if we have anything on what we do on May, I think it was May 3rd, the May meeting, that would be then going towards council or something. If something came up, we could we could discuss items there, and maybe we would know that in February 5th.
You mean April 5th?
Excuse me, April 5th. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so it looks like we've established our agenda for the next meeting. Going to close that item, and next is public comment.
Just to kind of step back,
Oh,
if you
yep.
make sure we'll do a motion, if that's what the committee
Oh.
wants to do.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes. Do we have a motion?
I can't list all the items, but at least we have a motion to include in next meeting all the things that we discussed, and I make a motion for that.
Is there a second?
I would second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed. Now we'll move on to public comment. There is no one in the audience, and Joshua, has anybody sent any emails or anything? No? Okay, so each person has at least 5 minutes to make their comments, and you can call in at 702-589-9629. Again, the number is 702-589-9629. It appears there's no further public comment. So with that, we will adjourn the meeting at 2:48 p.m.
Good job, Marlene.
Thanks, Eileen.